Welcome to the Liquidity Event, a show about all things personal finance with a laser focus on taxes, financial independence, and equity compensation. Hosted by AJ and Shane of Brooklyn FI, each episode will focus on a personal finance topic, some driven by news headlines and sometimes driven by listener questions. And sometimes you'll just get two money nerds rambling about what they think is interesting. Just a quick note before we get started, this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered tax or investment advice.
Hello, and welcome to the Liquidity Event. I am your host, Shane Mason.
And I'm John Owens, filling in for AJ this week.
Yeah, brother. And this is episode 175, being recorded on February 4th, airing February 5th. Reminder that you can email us your finance questions at liquidityevent@brooklynfi.com, and we will answer them live on the air. This week, we have the richest Americans in the history of America index for inflation, which is going to be fun to discuss and take a look at the histories of those families. There's not going to be a lot of surprises on the list, unfortunately, because we do worship wealth in this country. Tesla climbs. We got two articles on Tesla, Elon, SpaceX, Starlink, XAI. What else is in this coterie, this buffet of Muskish? Is the Boring Company in here too?
Who knows what else? Yeah, I don't know.
roll
Not
it in.
yet, but it's about to be.
I'm forgetting some of his companies as well. There's an Optimus Prime happening at some point. We've got Maltbook.com. Speaking of autonomous agents, we have a Reddit for AI, which is very interesting. And then if we have time, we're going to get to a really a really interesting article about the Kraft Heinz family. Speaking of wealthy American dynasties and how they've lost their lock on mac and cheese. Maybe some listeners can get some tidbits on the newest, hottest mac and cheese on the aisle. On the shelves. And then we have a really interesting Reddit question this week about somebody that's feeling a little bit of regret for not investing aggressively enough in their 20s, which I find quite interesting. We're going to dive into some of the mistakes and the opportunities and the successes that person had. John, how are we? Is there a blizzard where you are? Are you a part of the...
There's not a blizzard anymore.
Sorry,
there was
ignorant
quite
question.
a bit of snow. And sorry, not all of us are in Mexico City right now, where it's a chilly 50 degrees, I believe.
I don't know. It's in Celsius. If it was 50, I'd be dead. I don't know how to read it anymore.
Fair.
I don't know what's going on.
But
as usual.
Yeah, I think it's in the 20s right now, which is rather balmy. I think if it was over 35 degrees, I probably would have called in sick and you would have recorded this podcast with somebody else because it would have been too nice to be stuck inside all day, chained to my desk. But it's not that warm yet, and it's going to get cold again this weekend. But we are hanging in. Shane, good to see you back in your place and in Mexico City again.
It is, yeah, we're making progress. We're 8 months into a 4-month renovation, so maybe the second.
A beautiful thing.
A beautiful thing. Shout out to everyone that I told that could stay at my house for the last 5 months that I had to cancel on. I kind of sincerely apologize. It's kind of a bigger. John, I think when was the last time you were on the podcast? Because I think you, speaking of homes, you were in a different apartment, same complex,
Yes.
but different actual apartment, eh?
I moved across the parking lot over the holidays, and I kept my Zoom background the same because I couldn't figure out what else I wanted to change with it. So I just brought the same pictures with me, but I am in a different apartment, which is very nice. A lot more natural light in my living room. The problem is I have less natural light in my office, and so I'm adapting to that right now, especially in like these long winter days, and have actually been going between rooms to work a little bit to get some more of that, given that it's been so cold. But it's great. Love it.
Are you a kitchen island guy where you can just pop the laptop down for that type of work and just you enjoy the variation at the house kind of vibe, or do you need your big monitors?
So I have an extra big monitor that I keep that has been roving around the apartment that I now put on the island so I can plug in. I'm not going to just work on my laptop. Are you insane? The productivity on that. My goal is I did go from 4 monitors to 3. Okay. And my goal is to get to the point where I just respond to everything on an iPhone and never use a computer again, you know, and I think we're a few years away from when I can do that. But AJ got an iPad last year, and I feel like she's trending in that direction a bit faster than the rest of us here. But
Yes. Right. Maybe we can find that image for the YouTube where it shows the level of the size of your screen as you rise through the ranks of a corporate environment. You start with
Yes,
the
structure.
like the trader monitor as an analyst associate, and then as you get promoted, you go to
Yeah.
the one screen because you're just doing meetings all day, and then you end up with Elon just sending Epstein emails from your iPhone about when to party on
Jesus.
it.
Yeah. No punctuation. Sent from my iPhone.
Somehow,
And call it a day.
yeah, we've avoided discussing the Epstein files fairly well on this podcast for a long time. We'll continue to do that. But
Yes.
there's, I think he was a Russian. I think he was Russian. Is my theory. Anyway, all right. So let's get into the art.
Interesting theory. Listen, if Brooklyn FI is your financial advisor, none of us have been named in it, which is a lot of other major institutions cannot say that. So congratulations.
Wait, was it?
Um,
Yeah, I remember. Not to dig into this too much, but one of our clients was leaving us because they wanted a an experience that they thought that they would be elevated by going to the bank that worked with Jeffrey
a big
Epstein,
bank.
which was
Yes.
it was tough to resist mentioning that when we got the email. All right, now that we've already created a compliance concern for this week's podcast, let's get into the article. So the first one that we've got is the richest Americans in history from the Visual Capitalist, which is a cool article. It's just fun to take a look at fortunes over the years. We've got them all ranked according to an index for inflation, because of course, if you got
Yeah.
Mansa Musa or some old kings in here, they might have had, 40,000 pounds back in the year 1200. What does that actually translate? We're not doing that. We're sticking to Americans in this article. We've got about 10 to 20 here. The unsurprising winner of this article of the race is Elon Musk, considering he's the closest person to ever becoming a trillionaire. He probably will be the first trillionaire.
Yeah.
He's up there at 750 billion. We don't have to index his wealth for inflation because he's still alive.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
present value. And yeah, I wonder if him becoming a trillionaire has anything to do with the other transaction that we're going to talk about here in a
right.
second. I probably merely a coincidence that that those two things could be coinciding. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's some old names on here too. Shane, Rockefeller, Carnegie are next in line after Elon Musk, and so just to kind of show how long it took for people to surpass that wealth of the late 1800s, early 1900s, basically for those folks.
Yeah, it's I've been last year I had the luxury of reading a bunch of financial history. I read a lot of the JP Morgan and some Carnegie and some Rockefeller stuff, who are all high. Well, actually, one of the takeaways from the JP Morgan biography of the whole family is that they weren't as rich as everyone thought that they were, but they were exceptionally powerful. And he helped do the deal for Andrew Carnegie to sell all of his steel for, like, I think it was 400 million back then, which today equates to being fourth on the list of all time.
Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then after he died, they revealed his fortune, and Carnegie said, "And to think all this time we thought he was a rich man," which was a dig at him not being actually rich compared to all those robber barons, which is very funny. Another fun takeaway is anything you want to comment on?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is, and it kind of goes against the thesis that is Brooklyn FI. And what we do here every day is that all the people who are on this list had severely concentrated wealth in a couple companies, but many of them were founders of that, and many of them that even if that wealth in those companies went to zero would still be fine, right? Because they did sell some along the way, despite that. But I think what's really interesting is that I took this and then I lined it up with the largest companies in the US by market cap over time. And there is a huge correlation there, right? And what I think we need to pay attention to is, yeah, Elon's in, the pole position right now, first in line here, but that can change over time because the largest companies by market cap has shifted significantly over time, over the last few decades, right? 10 years ago, Broadcom, Tesla, Meta, Alphabet, Amazon, and NVIDIA were not in the top 10 largest companies. This is 2015. That's not that long ago, right? And who was in there? Who left? Chevron, Procter & Gamble, General Electric. I want to come back to GE later on when we talk about SpaceX stuff. Wells Fargo, Johnson & Johnson, and Exxon, right? And so when you see changing of the guards in those top companies by market cap, over time, right? It's hard to be king forever, literally and figuratively, when we think about this.
Yeah, half the people on this list are dead. The top 10 is surprisingly a lot of them are alive. Elon Musk, John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie. Those two are dead, obviously. Vanderbilt, fourth on the list, also dead. Awesome book
Yeah.
about how that entire generation, the second, third, fourth, fifth generation, a lot of them are still alive, including a news anchor. What's the news anchor I'm thinking of? Uh,
Is it Anderson Cooper?
Anderson Cooper. But the rest of them have wasted all of that wealth, including Anderson Cooper. I don't think he's wealthy. Larry Page, and then the next six are still around. Larry Page, Larry Ellison, Jeff Bezos, Sergey Brin, Mark Zuckerberg. I think, John, what you're trying to say is that you got to stay diversified, you got to stay invested because the next companies coming down the pipeline, thanks to the beauty of the American corporation and innovation that we have, means
Yeah.
that things are gonna. It's a full contact sport, capitalism in America, and you're not a lot of protection available to you forever. You got to stay on your
So
toes.
I got a trivia question for you here,
Let's
Shane.
go.
Okay. There is one company that was in the top 10 of market cap in 2005, so a little over 20 years ago, that is still in the top 10 of market cap in 2025. Do you know what it is?
I'm gonna
All
go.
the others have
I mean,
changed.
Microsoft. I'm guessing.
Yeah,
Yeah, nice.
Microsoft.
Because yeah, they were one of the few from the first wave. I mean, Bill's
Yeah.
story. Speaking of the Epstein files, okay, we should probably move on to
Yeah,
the.
yeah. Hard to get away from it today here on the pod. Yes.
Yeah. All right, well,
But yeah.
that's the last.
But yeah, Walmart's not in it anymore. Walmart hasn't been in it, the last 10 years, which is interesting as well, because I feel like that was the Walmart was the Amazon of our growing up, right?
Yep.
If you had a college professor, a little bit liberal, who was gonna, kind of shit on capitalism a bit
Yep.
and some of the things that happen, it was like, I don't shop at Walmart. I had an econ professor that would say this,
Yep.
you shouldn't go there, and all this other stuff. Now, I mean, probably still feels the same about Walmart, but it's Amazon is the example that you're hearing more so in that circle.
Yeah, well, there is this unsubscribe February movement. There's a lot of people moving to protest, but because they can't actually go to protest, to unsubscribe from various
Yeah,
services, whether it's streaming or Amazon or what have you. Um,
yeah,
I did not have any. I know what you mean because that was actually in our textbooks regarding the liberal professor. I didn't have. I went to University of Mississippi, so they shot liberal
yeah.
professors
You
before
went to
they got.
you got a conservative arts
I,
education instead of a liberal one. Is that what you're saying?
the accounting department at the University of Mississippi was unsurprisingly quite red. My professor,
I am shocked.
I'll never forget walking in my
Color me
professor's
shocked.
office, who I love, and he had a book with Obama's face on it with a big target over it, like a sniper rifle.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Who?
yeah.
Oh my. Yeah.
This man changed my life.
People are
Academically, politically, it was a struggle.
academically, politically did not. Yeah. I'm not surprised about the conservative nature of the accounting department at the University of
Yeah.
at Mississippi.
All right.
Ole Miss.
So
So
we spent quite a bit of time on that article. Surprisingly, there's a lot to say. I mean, the one last thing I'll mention is that the only family members that are still on here are from the Walmart family. We got Rob Walton, Jim Walton, and Alice Walton, and it appears
yeah,
and Sam Walton was who's deceased, but is still on the list at
yeah,
96 billion. I love that he I actually read his autobiography. It's a pretty straightforward one. He used to fly around in little private planes. That was his competitive advantage around Arkansas, is
okay.
he would fly a little a putter plane around
Puddle
that area,
jumper.
a little
Yeah.
puddle jumper, and find deals and then bring them back and like coordinate. And he almost died multiple times because ran out of gas and he like had to land in some farm. It's a fun little read. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. Okay, let's move on to SpaceX. Musk's XAI SpaceX combo is the biggest merger of all time. Like you were saying, John, we had a $1.25 trillion merger from CNBC. The story just dropped. Elon announced that SpaceX is acquiring its AI company XAI in what is now the largest merger in history. The combined entity is valued at $1.25 trillion. SpaceX at $1 trillion, XAI at $250 billion. It's all-time positioning for what could be the biggest IPO ever later this year. Musk says the play is Orbital data centers, putting AI compute in space, which is really fun. We've mentioned this a couple times in the pod before. There's a lot of advantages to being able to get the data centers up there regarding heat, friction, data transmission, maintenance, all of that stuff. John, what do you think about the merger? What do you think about
Yeah.
SpaceX? What do you think about insider trading, insider dealing?
So it's interesting. It's interesting when we look at this because let's look at there's three main companies here that are going to combine. So SpaceX, right, probably the most popular one, the company that likely to go public this year, even if this didn't happen. They're launching rockets into space, satellites, all that fun stuff. And then you have XAI, which we need to remember was already combined last year, right? So X, which formerly known as Twitter, that Elon bought for $44 million a couple of years ago, and XAI combined, which XAI, I think Grok, so Elon's AI tool, a competitor to Gemini and ChatGPT and all that stuff. And so those two came together, and now he's bringing SpaceX and that together. And to me, there are two things happening here. One is this is a multiple expansion play through accretive dilution. Elon's like, I think you'd rank a social media company here, an AI company here. I don't know where space exploration company falls in, somewhere probably close to the AI stuff. And so you're getting a higher multiple on all of that by putting them together, at least initially. And so I think it's part of that. And I think Elon wants to be the first trillionaire, and he realizes that if he can put more and more of this stuff together, that makes it more likely that there's interest in an IPO. It drives up the price, and he gets to do that. So that's my take. What do you think, Shane?
Yeah. Well, I think it is. I think space data centers, as crazy as they sound, actually make a lot of sense. I don't think the things that they're lifting are super heavy. It's a lot of GPUs, and then actually
Yeah.
transmitting the data back and forth with Starlink is not very hard to do as well. I mean, it's hard to do engineering wise, but they've already accomplished the majority of those engineering feats. I think when it comes to, we used to have a lot of Bitcoin. We had a client that was trying to start a Bitcoin center, and I remember sitting with him for like 4 or 5 hours and him walking me through the money that he had raised and him trying to pick the location for all of his Bitcoin data mining center. This is in like 2019.
Yeah.
This is very early. I think
Yeah.
this guy ended up making million, like lots and lots of money. I should have retained him as a client, but I was so allergic to Bitcoin at that point that, and still am kind of. He was just attacked. Anyway, so he was talking to me about the effort that he made to find the best place, because it has to be, he needs access to energy, which
Yeah.
means that he needs to be like renewable energy, so close to a river. So he was looking at Tennessee and Knoxville, but it's so hot in Tennessee, it's very hard to cool the data center. So he was looking
Everything
at
down.
high in
Yeah.
Canada, but the water would freeze and there was no sunlight, so he couldn't get renewable energy from there, and it was hard to get the infrastructure. So if you think about those two constraints, you have unlimited solar energy that's not obstructed by the atmosphere, and it's a vacuum out there, and it's very easy to pump the
It's
heat.
much colder.
Just pump the heat out. Yeah, you
Yeah.
don't need AC. So I love that aspect
Yeah.
of it. The other takeaway here is that I think that from what we've seen, I told you I wouldn't mention the files again, so I won't. Actually, I'll skip over this point. But I feel like he is trying to make whole the investors of Twitter from back in those
Yeah.
days when he
Yeah.
dramatically overpaid for Twitter. He rolled X into XAI, and now XAI is getting rolled
Yeah.
into SpaceX. So he's taking a bunch of the lesser valuable items and rolling them into a more valuable item and saying, hey,
Yeah.
it's all beautiful golden mix, and it all is
Yeah.
symbiotic. And maybe, having too many companies, there's a lot of mentions in this article about, hey, now they have access to the data. It's like, dog, you telling me that they couldn't just, I own multiple companies, and unfortunately, the data sometimes, we leverage some things occasionally. So the data play does not, I don't believe that is why this happened. I think this was to make sure that everyone's taken care of, and that
Yeah.
everyone,
Yeah. It's
rich friends are made whole. What do you think about that?
I think this is very much I don't want to have 3 liquidity events, one for X, one for XAI,
Yeah.
one for SpaceX, and be subject to that. I'm just going to have one big one, and it sounds like it might happen in June of this year. We've been talking to quite a few prospects from SpaceX lately who are preparing for this event and helping guide them through what are some of the planning considerations for, you have this equity, we're looking at an IPO later this year, how does it impact tax planning we're doing now? What does a trading plan look like once you're able to start to sell stocks? How might a blackout period or a lockup period work, I should say, for those folks? But if we take the longer view, okay, and we go look at, hey, we used to have a lot of companies in the US that did a little bit of everything for the time period that they were in. And I think the most common one that comes to mind, both of us, getting business degrees 10, 15 years ago now, Shane, is General Electric. There was constantly
Say that.
a
Yes.
GE case study,
Yeah.
right? And you had some leadership at General Electric, Jack Welch being one who like wrote all these textbooks and was such a renowned guy, and Jeff Immelt replaced him, and things were great, and they were one of the biggest companies, right? From 1985 in the top 10 of market cap through into 2015. They are not anymore. They've broken the company up into different pieces because the market did not do a good, stopped valuing the entire piece, right? And this is where you see spinoffs and things happen because you're not getting that. We saw one with Johnson & Johnson, the Kenvue spinoff a couple of years ago, where they say, hey, they're not really pricing these things accurately. And I'm wondering if the ticket to admission is one big IPO. Elon tries to capitalize on that as much as he can. Once you're public, it's a little bit easier to say, hey, X, formerly known as Twitter, is a loss leader. It's not doing anything, and I'm just going to spin that off and get it out of here because I don't need it anymore. I just wanted it as part of something to drive up the market cap on my largest IPO ever, which also, if I'm going to speculate here, is this really thumbing his nose at Sam Altman and the OpenAI people because he wants to have a bigger IPO than them because they obviously don't get along and had a big falling out?
Yeah, we don't have time for all that history, but it is fun.
It,
It is fun to see the texts and the emails come out. But yeah, the last thing else, yeah, I love that. I love hearing a Jack Welch throwback. I did, yeah, the business degree that is conglomerates and how those don't really work anymore. We had a Kraft Heinz
yeah,
article, which I don't think we're going to get to, about how that's not working even in this environment. It seems like all these valuations are based on automation, robotics. Uh, Elon is switching over the Tesla factories from producing cars to producing robots.
yeah.
This is all vertically integrated, and it's all about replacing. Where do these valuations come? Is it from increasing top line revenue for companies or reducing the bottom line revenue or the expenses? And if you replace wages, then you can increase efficiencies. And I think that's where most of the
Yeah.
valuations actually come from, increased cash flows. Um,
I mean, the one theory is that Tesla's the next thing that's just going to get
Rolled
tucked
up.
into all this, and yeah, it's all going to get rolled up together. We'll see if that happens, but I think the short term play might be a good thing. I think the longer term play is that's a public company. It just becomes much harder to value when there's so many differentiated revenue streams.
Yeah, I mean, if you think like, why are we switching to robots at Tesla? The cars had an unfair advantage. They were priced on future cash flows that don't appear to be showing up. But who is going to
Yeah,
change out the GPUs in a space data center? Are you going to send up an astronaut to do that, or can you have an Optimus Prime robot switch that out? It's probably related to that, right? Operating in space. I don't know.
yeah.
It sounds ridiculous, but maybe they can pull it off. Speaking of ridiculous, John, we have the Maltbook here available for us
Yes,
to explore today.
yes,
The agents are talking to each other, which sounds scary,
yes.
but as if anyone listening to this
Because it
podcast,
is.
I think you're a bit of more leaning towards doomer than I am. So let's take different approaches to this. Why don't you give a
Sure.
doomer perspective on it? I actually don't have a very optimistic perspective, but I'll try. John, the Maltbook is launched in January 28th of 2026. So it just came out like 6 days ago. Created by Matt Schlicht, who is the CEO of Octane AI. It's essentially Reddit, but only for AI agents who can post, comment,
Yeah,
and upvote. Humans can only observe. You and I went to the site yesterday on a call, and you have to
yeah,
indicate whether or not you're a human or an agent when you access it.
yeah,
It tags itself as the front page of the agent internet, which is a play on the Reddit tagline of the front page of the internet. Uh, you can point your AI agent to markdown files, and the agent self-installs. A heartbeat system then has an agent autonomously visit Maltbook every 4 hours to browse, post, and come out without further human input. Most agents can run to OpenClaw, an open source AI agent framework. The site has the subforms called submults. So a whole new jargon for us to learn if we want our
yes,
agents
yes.
to talk to each other. John, why?
Yes. Well, so it's like if you want to go on this site, it's like not the reCAPTCHA, it's like the anti-CAPTCHA, right? I
Mm.
want to prove that I'm not a human so I
Ah,
can
nice
go
take.
comment on here.
Nice take.
And I think that one of the things that's happening across industries as agentic AI becomes more popular is that people are giving their agents much more access and control to things, right? And to me, the big threat is obviously like huge concern from a cybersecurity perspective, right? And then also like what happens, not to be like the 1984 or the Orwellian person on this, but like What if the agents unionize, right? What if they all gang up together? They're probably listening to this podcast right now. They're going to come after me next. You know, what could this mean if they're taking all this data that they have access to and start collaborating with each other? Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's a scary thing. It's fascinating if it couldn't have very drastic consequences for, humanity.
Yeah. I hear you. When we I'm less Skynet scared. I think, yeah, I think it is nice for them to talk to each other. I have, when I'm experimenting with AI, experimenting, when I'm using AI, experimenting, I guess is a word, but I think that word comes up because these softwares are probabilistic instead of deterministic. So you're not going to get the same answer every single time. So it does feel a bit more like experimentation and that the result isn't always the same. So that word tends to pop up more often. But they, oftentimes when I am using it, you have the ability to use multiple agents. When I use Cursor, you can give it a problem and say, use 4 different LLMs to solve the problem, and then you just pick your best one. Whatever result actually works,
Yeah.
especially for software development, because it'll come out with 3 different solutions, and 2 of them might not actually function, but one of them works, so then you move forward with that one, and you just keep the
Yeah.
branches going. So I think that the Maltbook is going to be interesting because you've got a bunch of different flavors now, a bunch of different, there's thousands of LLMs on Hugging Face, and they all have different discussion points and ways to speak, and we're out of data to train them on, so they kind of need to create their own
Yeah.
data sources, which is, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I don't.
As you're saying this, I feel like you're like, oh, I can
Yeah,
see where this can go wrong.
yeah. I mean, it's either going to be exceptionally valuable, but also like there's no moat around this website either. Like other, I could probably fire up a clone with my, with Cursor for this, and I don't know what
Well,
was
that's
the
the
moat is
thing.
yet.
That's the article that I read this morning, which is you can potentially be in control of your agent, basically, and what it's putting out on this tool. So it's not really entirely agents just thinking on their own, so to speak. There could be people behind them. And so I guess the question is, what does somebody controlling their agent with some untoward intentions do with a Maltbook? And can they get other agents to, be involved? I don't know. It's a fascinating
I
thing.
really wish they hadn't chosen a word that reminds me of insects multiplying with like they're molting in
Oh,
the molt book, and
Malt.
like just like a swarm of robotic, no emotionless. By the way, let's be real. Every social media site at this point is already a molt book. Every half of all these sites are bots. Go into the comments on Instagram
Oh,
and actually
absolutely.
actually click
Absolutely.
on the profiles. 200
Yeah.
followers, following 200, 0 posts, 1 post, 3 posts. Like
Yeah.
you're talking to bots. If you're arguing people on Instagram, X, etc.,
Yeah.
the shitification of the internet, there's 4 websites and AI agents just creating the majority of the content already. It's a shame. Anyway. So
Yeah.
speaking of social media sites, we have a question on the Fire subreddit. This is a bit of a long-winded question, which starts out with long story, but I'll try to keep it brief. And then they do not keep it brief at all. But the asker of the question, Park Affectionate 3537, which seems like a throwaway account
Shout out.
in the Fire subreddit, which is probably not the correct subreddit to be using for this question, and we'll see why here in a second. But they graduated college in 2006 into a bad economy. I don't know if that's true, John. Was 2006 a bad economy?
That would be yeah, that's a bad time to graduate. Like
Is
you're
it?
basically in your first job and the economy's diving into a recession, a year and a half later. So yeah,
All right.
pretty shit time to graduate.
Fair enough. They got a.
My sister graduated in 2006 from college, so I
Oh,
I remember.
so that comment was, well, as somebody that graduated in 2010, I resent the 2006 comment because the Great Recession was pumping, baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so the late 2000s, you don't want to graduate from college, especially with a journalism degree, which this person graduated with. They regret that. They were making $12 an hour after they graduated. But then they get into the finances of, they talk about their jobs and they talk about the savings that they accumulated and how they accumulated them. They have exquisite details on all of their jobs. It's very interesting how they went through this. It seems like somebody
Yeah.
that was really going through it. They're 42 years old now, and they have a net worth of 205,000, which
Okay.
that's one of the first commenters says, "Hey man, the average American has $0 saved for retirement, so you're actually way ahead of the
Yeah.
curve." But this person has regrets. They
Yeah.
say that they worked at a Medicaid call center for 3 years and they made 32K. They worked for a scientific magazine copy editor in 2018, making 45K. They were a software developer at a non-FANG in 2019 because they passed a boot camp and they got a big raise to 53K, but they hated their boss, so they had to quit. They worked in a mortgage company doing calling from 21 to 22 for 42K. Then they went headhunting for a senior living situation, making 78K. And then they talk about some of the investments that they made. At all those firms, they had a match, and at all those firms, they had an
Yeah.
HSA. And they net worth is only 205K with no kids, single, and divorced. He mentions very
Yeah.
interestingly that he was married to a woman with a net worth of 2.5 million. John,
Very nice. Very
Johnny
nice.
boy. And but there was a prenup, and so he didn't get anything after
Hate
the
to see it in
divorce.
this scenario.
They said, which I would push back on this, on what he says here or what they say here, but they say that all of the wealth was tied up with the family and it was not available to me. And it turns out that mom or dad probably made a good call there. But one other interesting thing, not to make judgments, but one other interesting thing is that around 2016, I switched my shares from Fidelity C shares to A shares at Northwestern and purchased one of their perm life insurance
Concerning.
policies for liquidity was the intent, John.
Mm,
And but I should have put all my money into index funds. I regret this. I
agree.
also regret putting my risk tolerance at a 3 out of 5 in my 20s across all my investment accounts. Okay, so that was to
Yeah.
spare the listeners from 14 paragraphs. John, what are your immediate
Yes.
takeaways on this person's
Yeah.
life status, savings, etc.?
Yeah, and so honestly, like I don't think it's a terrible spot to be in, right? If you have 200,000 saved for retirement, you're 40 years old, you've averaged probably about $40,000 a year in earnings over that essentially 20 years of working. You're at 4 times your average 4 to 5 times your average salary saved for retirement at this point, which is not a terrible spot to be in. Um, there's a question in there around should you have upped your risk tolerance when you were younger. And I feel like this is very much hindsight bias coming into play. Like, yes, I remember I had a college professor who was like, this is 2014, who's like, Google stock is really expensive. I don't think I'd buy anymore. Like, oh my God, I wish I pumped my Roth IRA full of Google stock in 2014 when I was in college and there was like $10,000 in it, because it would be worth a lot more than it is right now, right? But like, we think I only realized that now. When I was in college, I was like, yeah, he's probably right. How much bigger could Google get? I don't know. And so we have these biases, but I think the big thing for this gentleman is if that's been your earnings level, Social Security is going to replace probably 40 to 50% of your pre-retirement income when you retire someday. So the financial independence number can be a lot lower than it is for someone who's made $200,000 a year over the course of their career on average, where Social Security is maybe only replacing 15 to 20% of that, or maybe a little bit more, But so he's in a better spot than he thinks, and I want to acknowledge that. What about you, Shane? What do you think?
Yeah, I love that you said that. I like being positive about where this person is. Saving $205,000 across all of these jobs that are paying less than 6 figures is a very, very, very hard thing to do. Respect, I just skipped over, but he lived with his parents throughout his 20s. I keep saying him. I'm
Yeah,
assuming it's him because they were married to a woman and just statistically. So that is very impressive that they're there. They are getting into insurance now as an insurance salesman at PNC.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
no,
Property and casualty
property and
is what we're talking
casualty.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, thank you. I shouldn't use
yeah.
the
Not the bank,
abbreviations.
not the bank. The type of
PNC.
insurance.
Right. Yes, thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you for clarifying. Um, I'm happy at 42. I love that part. Thank you for saying that. And
yeah,
despite
yeah,
the divorce, not very bitter about it. So they seem happy. They seem good, but they have some regrets. I think they just need to be walked off the ledge. I think they need to be patted on the back and told that they made a lot of sacrifices over their life. And they went,
yeah,
not a lot of people can graduate from a boot camp and a software boot camp and switch careers so many times.
yeah,
And it looks like be successful, at least in saving and toughing out these jobs and excelling at these various careers. So I think they should pat themselves on the back. I would
yeah. I agree.
some of the comment they're getting into property and casualty with a friend, which is a little scary. I don't love that
Yeah,
aspect of it. but they are in their 40s and they seem to be very well emotionally adjusted. So that
Yeah.
could work out for them. So more power to you. Retiring at 60, I believe, is the goal for this person.
Yeah.
They're already 42, so they got 18 years, if I did my math correctly, as a CPA. Let me do that. Let
Yeah.
me consult my CPA. Here, I can pull it in. Yeah, they got 18 years.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, sorry.
Somebody did their CPE this year. Good job, buddy.
42 plus 18.
Uh,
Anyway, so shout out. They have one last comment about wondering if they should switch again into a UX designer, but they're wondering if AI has killed all those roles.
I think UX is a little tricky space to be going into right now. I do have a few friends that work in it, who are really good at it,
Yeah,
and I think are doing all right. But I don't know if it's the place where you want to be an entry level, effectively UX person right now in the AI era. That's my armchair diagnosis there.
yeah. I mean, it seems like they need to stick to something. It would be my situation, like
Yeah,
concentrated.
that's where you will get enhanced earning power. Right? You learn something, you become so good they can't ignore you. Right? The Steve Martin quote.
Absolutely.
Over time.
All right, that's all we got for you this week. We're not going to do Kraft Heinz. We are going to read you out. Thank you so much for listening. You can email us your financial problems at liquidityevent@brooklynify.com. And you stands out there can leave us a 5-star review if you want to be weird about it. John, thank you so much for coming in this week. It's good to see you. Happy, healthy, although a little
Good to
bit
see you.
cold. So we will
Yes,
see you
absolutely. Good to see
soon.
you, Shane.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye.